see the Minister of Finance and Economic Development, that is Professor Mthuli Ncube, presenting the mid-term budget review as well as the supplementary budget. And it was the one that the nation has been waiting with a bated heart. Mixed feelings, if we were to take a judgment from the interviews that we had soon after the interview of what the minister presented. And today we seek to even explore further and look into his presentation, some of the critical areas that he did address and some of those that he did miss, much to the disappointment of maybe the ordinary man on the street. But what does it mean to industry? What does it mean to retailers? What does it mean to the business people? What does it mean to the ordinary man on the street? Those are the things that we're going to be tackling and discussing today on The Grill. And we have invited, as always, our economist, that is Mr. Pascal Mandea. We have also invited, that is the MP for Chekuti West, that is Honorable Dexter Nduna. As soon as he comes in, hopefully he will be making it into the studio. We'll be having him on the show. And we have also invited other economists to come in and be with us to share with us the expertise, as we want varied voices to this effect. But so far in the studio, we've got Mr. Pascal Mandea, punctual as always, with us in the studio to find out more about what the minister did present yesterday. How does it shape the way forward for economic recovery for the country? Some have said he has ticked the right boxes for the likes of the IMF and other monetary, international monetary organizations, but he has put a bit of a squeeze on the ordinary man on the street. Is this a fact? Is this the analysis? Let's get to find out more from our economist in the studio, Mr. Pascal Mandea. And it gives me pleasure to say a very, very good morning, Mr. Mandea, and welcome to Classic 263 once more.
Good morning, Valentine. Thank you for having me here.
And of course, yesterday, the minister did present a 10.38 Zimbabwe dollar mid-term budget, supplementary budget rather, and people, he did review, he did emphasize still that we have a surplus that people have been arguing about of $195 million. It's the first time it has happened. And he did also present some of the economic fundamentals that they are putting in place in terms of in making sure that economic recovery is possible. He did touch on domestic debt and on international debt as well, and it looks like he's saying I'm living within my means in his presentation. But let's look at your assessment in general before we get into the specifics, like the taxation, the debt management, and also some of the safety nets that he has put the people in these difficult times of economic recovery, where austerity looks like is still there, before we can really say we are putting our economy on the right driver's seat.
Yeah, I think it was mainly a box-ticking exercise. I wasn't too excited. Maybe I expected too much, but also relieved that he did the honorable thing regarding agriculture and food security. A lot of money has been put up to make sure that our people have something to eat, and also the farmers go back to the fields. What's left, of course, is to understand the modality, particularly regarding the issue of funding agriculture, to say we have had schemes in the past that didn't produce results. He did mention that now they are going to discriminate on the basis of productivity from the past, as well as servicing of those loans. We hope the ugly head of corruption will not rear its head and disrupt things as well. The real big miss, or misses, in my own opinion, the issue to do with the ZIMRA debt. There are organizations and people who owe ZIMRA a lot of money, by judging by the reports from ZIMRA. I think when we converted to local currency in February, it was sitting at $4.5 billion US. They got a huge discount when we converted. Now it's probably 4.5 billion Zimbabwe dollars. He did mention in his initial presentation on the transitional stabilization program that you will do something about it. The only thing that I've noticed regarding enforcing compliance is he's now saying we have just hiked the interest rates on people who delay paying those tax dues. I would have thought that he would have come up with a new structure, because he did promise somewhere along the way that we will have a new taxation structure, and I thought maybe we would be a bit firm, because in Zimbabwe, in my own view, the tax rules are rather lax. In other jurisdictions, if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail, or the taxman finds a way of collecting. If you don't submit returns, you get jailed as well. I'm not seeing any changes there. It looks like he's sacrificing the civil servants instead of collecting that money, because when you look at the main adjustments for the remuneration for civil servants, it's really condonation of what they have been given in the past. And when we move away from a budget of 4.2 to 5.9, and you're already taking into account those increments, it's not much. Perhaps he's expecting to the current scenario where every month somebody threatens a strike and then they renegotiate to continue going on. But I don't think that's a good thing. I'm not too sure whether he really expects to stick to this budget, or it was just a question of fulfilling the requirements of the law to say, okay, we have to go back to Parliament and mention some of the critical things, knowing fully well that this is not going to happen. One of the things that comes out very clearly is the expectation regarding inflation developments that he spoke to. There's this expectation that inflation will suddenly go away, I think this month, that there will be a huge climb down. But this is the same budget where there are adjustments that have been made to power. There are adjustments that have been made to the pricing model for fuel, whose impact I think is going to be another increase, which is significant. So these are the key drivers of inflation, and I don't see how inflation would all of a sudden go down when these things have changed adversely. One of the things that we don't talk about as well is to do with the actual trade balance. He did mention that in Q1, for the first time since GNU, we had a trade surplus where he was just saying imports were now less than exports. But you realize that this is only one quarter. It's not sustainable in the long term. When you look at the actual trend, we are not doing anything to improve, anything significant to improve exports, other than just tinkering and rationalizing certain taxation rates, like in the gold sector. There is no real export incentive. Perhaps maybe it's because in the last few years we used to talk so much about the export incentive scheme that was funded by the bond notes. I would have expected that given the results from that export incentive scheme, we would have done something significant. Just changing policy on its own takes a bit of time. Tied to that, the issue of import restrictions as well. It seems like we are still happy to have a situation where we reduce our import bill because of the unavailability of either the products or services. In this case, we are talking about fuel and power, or the unavailability of foreign currency to fund. I would have thought now we would be moving towards a situation where we reconsider even putting bans on certain things, like I know it's controversial, but the issue of used motor vehicles. I don't think it's progressive for us to continue to ignore such a big issue. The argument that we don't have plans for new cars falls flat on its face, because remember, the alternative to a used vehicle being brought into the country today is a used vehicle that is already in the country. We've got a lot of dead capital tied down in these used vehicle and other things that have been imported that are just lying around and not being bought. What we need to do is to get interventions into those markets. I mean, these are things that have been known by economists since the 1970s, to say, what do we do? Market signaling, things like that. We put guarantees and so forth. So instead of us relying on a market that has clearly failed, to regulate the purchase of things that we already have here, I would have thought the ministry or the state would do something to at least make sure that we unlock that value. So I'm still trying to be very positive about this budget, but the impression that I get is he was just ticking boxes, and there are certain fights that he knows he's going to have going forward, like with the civil servants. To reiterate what I said, I believe the state should have done more to collect the money that is owed by business legally. That 4.5 billion, those businesses should just pay up. And again, it's the same thing with Zamco. Yes, it's into the sunset period, but we know with what happened with the devaluation of the dollar, those secured debts, the securities now far outstrip those debts. There's no reason why we can't wind down. If, as alleged by the governor of the Reserve Bank when he was talking to the Public Accounts Committee, if all those debts are secured, it means the value of those houses should cover the debts. So if we are not facing losses, why should we continue doing that? So I'm not too sure he's doing enough to actually collect those taxes. One other thing that is critical, there is now quite a bit of politicking coming from the minister regarding interpretation of these figures, where we talk of surpluses and austerity and whatever. But the reality is, and I know I disagree with a lot of our listeners on this, the government should pay whoever it owes. And we talk about a lot of expenditure having happened last year. A lot of it is accounting because we are running cash budgeting system. But no one has come out to really put points in place to say this government expenditure should have been avoided. It's like we are saying the suppliers to government should not be paid if the government has no money, or government employees should not be paid if the government has no money. They are already severely underpaid. My belief is the government should find that money from the citizens, because ultimately we are the beneficiaries of this. We can't sacrifice teachers, nurses, and other people, police people, the army people, people who work for government simply because we want to run around and avoid paying taxes. The other area, Valentine, if I might maybe quickly conclude, something that was brought up, the issue of local authorities owing ZESA money. There's a suggestion that has been made. I've been trying to push this as well. Unfortunately, I may be abusing this platform now. People who owe local authorities, I don't think it's fair for them to continue accessing short electricity simply because it's prepaid. Why don't we do something to collect those debts? City of Harare, for instance, was owed 900 million US. With devaluation now, it's 900 million Zim dollars. But their imports for instance, for the import chemicals to clean water, the prices haven't gone down. We are doing nothing to collect that, because in terms of the law, the city council really can't go and sell people's houses. Perhaps we need to review that to say the Ministry of Finance should look at ways of encouraging local government bodies to collect that. The statement that he made is like he's pleading with people to pay their bills. We can't continue like that, because if people need to dispose of houses or need to stop buying other non-essentials to keep their houses, then we must really do something. So yeah, that's a big one for me. Like I said, maybe I'll grow to really appreciate and love this particular presentation, but for me, it's really ambivalent. I felt he was just ticking boxes.
Having said that, but let's look at some of the critical areas that he did touch on in terms of the economic hardship that are currently prevailing and providing safety nets. He did put aside $1.1 billion for those safety nets, where he did focus on issues to do with health, education, social protection, amongst others as well. Transport as well. They're focusing on that in terms of cushioning people during these hard times. Do you think that is enough, though, in his approach? I'm sure he understands that it's going to be really difficult for the ordinary man, but he has provided that $1.1 billion as a safety net, so that the infrastructure-wise, everything is catered for in that instance.
Yeah, it's very difficult to interrogate the numbers individually, because a lot of what we actually use here is imported. So we don't know how far he will be able to rein in the exchange rate. For us, $1.1 billion today is just over 120 million. But if the exchange rate depreciates further, say to 1 to 20, that amount is halved. Something has been done there. But of course, the interesting figure that was hidden in there, finally we get to know how much it's costing the state to subsidize Zupco. It's a huge chunk of money, but I think it has to be done. We also look forward to a situation where gradually perhaps that subsidy is reduced. I don't think some of the fares that people are paying to get into Zupco are sustainable into the long term. Of course, it's all part of a public mass transit system that they are putting in place. NRZ was mentioned as a component of that system, but we haven't had much from the DIG deal and so forth. So these are things that we probably need to interrogate outside of the budget. But yeah, it's good that that social protection is happening. The real highlight, of course, is we are now doing something about urban poverty. I think for the first time in the history of this country, we are actually, the state is now distributing food supplies to people in urban areas, starting with Bulawayo and Harare. It's not good that our urban people are also being acknowledged to be very poor, but at least it's a start that we are acknowledging that people deserve to live regardless of where they live.
Quite interesting. This is the group right here on Classic 263. We are talking about the 2019 midterm budget review by the Minister of Finance, where he provided the supplementary budget. We did announce a string of measures to cushion workers while stimulating domestic growth and increasing revenue. Let's now come to the bread and butter issues, which I think most of our listeners are waiting for. Yes, the other things are a bit technical, where we'll try and invite industry to, as well to get their reaction to it. But let's go to the bread and butter issues, where we did see the minister increase the tax threshold from $350 to 700 Zimbabwe dollars in order to cushion taxpayers and maybe sort of aggregate or stimulate aggregate demand for goods and services in the country. Do you feel, though, that this is enough? Because people are arguing that when we went into a monocurrency, the money that was wiped up is almost 1:10. Looking at the interbank rate now of what they were earning. For instance, if somebody was earning $500 potentially, when it was converted to 1:1, it potentially means he's earning about 50 United States dollars right now, which means the people expected a cushion of buy 10 or buy 5 in terms of their tax threshold, or at least by 5 the tax threshold, and then looking at salaries going up as much as by 5 or by 7 at most. Your take on that aspect, where the ordinary man saying, I don't think we were taken care of by this supplementary budget announcement?
Well, there are two things. Those who work in the private sector, their wage agreements are between them and their employers. Some of those people have already gotten increments. That's why we get inflation, because then the prices of whatever they supply goes up. But coming down to the reality for the civil servants, when you move the lowest take bracket from 350 to 700, effectively you are saying you're looking at an additional 350 that was being taxed at 20%. That's no longer being taxed. So you multiply the additional 350, it's $70. It's not much, but it's a start. It's not going to be enough. I think instead of trying to cushion the civil servants by just adjusting the lower end of the tax bracket, a proper increment would have been appropriate. But then again, it would have perhaps messed up the whole system. So there's this idea that even those people who don't work for government expect then to participate in government-related negotiations. I don't think it's fair. Again, let's be honest with ourselves. If we continue increasing salaries, we bring back inflation as well. So that will all be in vain, because the minister does not have control over a lot of the prices. All he controls are those things that are either have a pricing model that requires intervention from the states, or services that are supplied from the states. Interestingly, you also notice that there were other boxes that were ticked in terms of even licensing things and whatever. There were a lot of small little things that were in there that might appear insignificant, but perhaps will help the state in also recovering revenue. Adversely, of course, that will increase inflation. So the issue that private sector salaries should have been adjusted, they are not adjusted by the Minister of Finance. All he does is adjust for civil servants. And let's bear in mind that it's only just over 300,000 people are employed by the state. The other people then into their own businesses. Do
you feel somehow when he didn't go more than double on the threshold? He was also handling government expenditure on salaries, which has been a big elephant in the room and a big headache for government as well. Thus then ticking the right box in terms of controlling how much government is spending on employees.
Yeah, it was box ticking. I don't think that's realistic. Certainly the Apex Council, I expect them to have a say on this. There will be negotiations outside the budget. And unfortunately, the reality is that they would then have, later on at the end of the year, we'll see in the budget outturn. It's unfair. Perhaps it's a strategy not to encourage people to then expect huge increments. But this, I don't think this is sustainable in the short term. Our civil service, it's not their fault that we don't want to pay taxes. Why must they be penalized simply because other people are withholding money that should be going to government? I don't believe the way to do this is to say those who supply or work for government must be penalized. We must look for the money. We still have people in the private sector making money. They must contribute because essential services provided by government benefit everybody.
All right, let's take contributions coming through from our users. I'm sure they're itching to contribute. You can do so on our two landline numbers. The numbers are 0242 49651, 0242 49631. Those are the two numbers. As for our WhatsApp platform, it's already blazing. The number is 0719 49651. Come through with your questions. Our economist is in the studio. All right, this one, okay. Mulauzi, thank you very much. You say morning grill time is small. Please extend. Our bosses are listening. I'm sure they will make a plan about it. The budget seems to be aimed at mopping out the ordinary men on the street from the face of Zimbabwe through natural selection. Surely, how is unemployed supposed to survive with prices going up through the roof and without any source of income? Noah Sbanda. Thank you very much, Noah, for getting in touch. Yeah. We can't hear you on live stream. Please help us, DJ on live stream. Please, I hope guys are taking care of it. They've heard the message. Good morning, Valentine. We appeal to the finance minister that he should consider that the English he uses when presenting the budget is too deep for all people and other people also in rural areas to understand who did not go to school. Why not use vernacular PR at least to simplify the English? And can somebody please screen repeats on TV, on the debates of Parliament, so we can follow like what South Africa does. All right, noted. And I'm sure that's why we've got the likes of Pascal coming through as well. Coming through as well to explain and give us more contributions so that so as to simplify things. Mofela Wacho from our Facebook page says Zebra is owed billions but still declare huge profits. Balance me quickly there. Thank you very much, Mofela, for that contribution. Mr. Mandeya, kwatunoenda pana nyaya kuda kuita hold on chipasaka kwakatanga diko kwatakava. All right, thank you very much. I'm disappointed in the budget because the minister seems to copy other countries in other things, but not salary hiking, toll gate elements, electricity, but from someone who gets paid how much a month. Mr. B. Bulawayo, thank you. This was the morning, Val. Since coming back, I'm an avid listener of the grill. When I get grips or the I wish to be one of your panelists. Thank you very much. We'll definitely welcome that. Welcome as many varied voices there. Right, Pascal, why is the minister stopping publication of year-on-year inflation? I'll give you some of those.
Yeah, it was misinterpreted. People were trying to score cheap political points by using figures inaccurately. So technically is right. We can't compare prices in US dollars with prices in Zim dollars without making an adjustment for the exchange rate. So people were now comparing those prices and making it look like it was 1-to-1. So it happened before in 2009. So now this is just to manage expectations. But once you've got the month on month and you've got the figures for 2018, if you want to compute that, it's easy. It's a piece of cake. That's where some of us make our money. You call me, then I work it out for you and charge you.
Interesting. Thank you very much. But somebody says, Anzi, economics is the Pascal. I think he's been saying when you mentioned about people paying their debts and owning up to their debts, that people
my apologies, but don't shoot the messenger. There's something that came up. There's this gentleman who was talking about people who are unemployed, who don't work for government, prices going up.
Yes.
The government doesn't directly control what happens with private businesses. We asked for market forces about 10 or so years ago. We said we want to go and deal with each other privately there. So if you're working in the private sector, or if you are buying privately sourced or sold goods, the issue is with you, with your supplier. It's not really directly a government thing. Of course, government will influence policy here and there. But if you've got unscrupulous traders in there, they'll just rip you off. I'm surprised people are not talking about the merchant codes, the eco cash thing. There were people who were making a lot of money.
Now they've been caught up with. Indeed. This one says, why should I pay the city of Ferrari if they cannot tell me how much I owe them since the system is down? Can my payment get into a system which is down, or I will be paying at my own risk? Is quite interesting. Say a surplus will only be a surplus if it also a surplus in our homes. Let's take a call. I'm sure you respond to that. I will take a few contributions before I ask you to respond. Radio, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, welcome.
How are you, Valentine?
I'm very well. Please go ahead.
Yes, I would just like to encourage Pascal to maintain his objectivity. The other thing which we should interrogate as a nation is the cost of corruption. Because what is essentially happening is that most of the people are actually subsidizing the corrupt, and that should be brought to the fore. The nation should know what is the cost of corruption and what are we doing to reduce that, because it's part of the huge subsidy which we are giving to those who are in power and those who are actually corrupt. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. 0244-9651, 0244-9631. Those are the two landline numbers. You can get in touch. Let's get a call. Radio, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well. Reduce the volume of your stereo, please.
Thank you. Right. Honestly, it's really something else for us to hear that we have got surplus budget when we don't see Basarai with Sunday. We still have got our potholes. We still have the Sesa, Isirikuanika, and stuff like that. So I remember the last time I was reading about him, he had said they've had surplus for 3 months. But interestingly, Sesa Ikutine Chkweret. So surplus like Irikuite,
don't you
the likelihood has to improve. Everything is not improving yet. We are having surplus in budget. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I would have loved to ask you a question, though, that the surplus that he's talking about is within the first 6 months, isn't it, that he has realized the surplus. So I'm sure there are other areas where that money is going. We'll need him to explain where that the surplus money is going into. I'm sure he will talk about amenities and other subsidies and importation that the government is taking care of in the critical areas like fuel, though it doesn't translate. It's a mere $195 million of a surplus, so it's not that much, really. But I would like to touch on that as well. But this one says, Pascal, we have interest in this one. Subsidies are necessary on certain commodities. However, the electricity tariff review is too low for a government that is cash constrained to sustain the level of the subsidy.
That is very correct. But again, one of the things that he mentioned is he is no longer going big bang, where we just have one major increment. He's trying to condition people into these adjustments. So until the next budget, we will expect ZESA perhaps to get more increases. But talking to where the surplus is going to go, this particular budget review, when you look at the numbers, we expect a huge deficit, because remember, there's that expenditure that is going to go towards agriculture support and also importation of foodstuffs. So I think the issue about surplus is, like I said, when he was talking on a month-to-month basis, is really a part of it is politicking, because remember also the critics of the government in the past have always said, you're spending more than what you are getting. So it's a small political point, but the long term is when you look at the actual budget, we will get a huge deficit. I think it's justified because we can't let people go hungry, and we can't destroy agriculture simply because we want to maintain clean books.
0242499651, 0242499631, the two numbers you can get in touch with us right here on Classic 263 as we look at the budget review, the midterm budget review presented by the Minister of Finance, where he did also present the supplementary budget. We look at some of the critical areas that he did address, and what do they mean to the ordinary man on the street. True, Pascal, the government thinks it's getting forex from used vehicle duty tax, but the bigger picture is that more forex would have gone to Japan. To beat the 3-month forex retention period, exporters are importing used vehicles and locking up forex. Too many cars for a small, poor country. Let's take a call. Radio, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, you're live on Classic 263. Please talk to us.
Hello, morning.
Yes, you're live. Please go ahead.
Yes, go to address it over now. We my USA and I'm a company that has on a DSTV. They are demanding US, and yet this is a dynamic US. Go to address it always, so please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I think you did touch on that yesterday on those that are having services in Zimbabwe, who are accessing services outside Zimbabwe, but you have their hub in the country as well in terms of their taxation as well. I think you did touch on that.
Yeah, true. But again, the issue with DSTV is they are considered imports. Mm-hmm. And in the past, if we go back to pre-dollarization, you would actually need to go and apply from your bank or from an authorized dealer. So really, in terms of us spending the forex, it comes down to the same thing. What I would encourage this particular listener is to go to a bureau de change or go to a bank and see whether they can access that, because I'm sure it falls below the no questions asked threshold.
Okay. All right, thank you. 02449651. Let's take another caller. Radio, good morning.
Good morning, sir. If the minister has been indexing some of the services, goods and services, against the US dollar, why is he not doing that universally, including salaries? And then, two, the policy shift, seeming policy shift steps out of ignorance. He has allowed US dollars to be used by other quarters of the economy. Why? Love and hate. Is it not what you call policy inconsistency? Can you explain to that, Mr. Pascal? Could assist us with?
All right, let me quickly jump to that. There are two things. The indexing of salaries to US dollars, it means we are multiplying the Zim dollar bill by 8, 9. The money just isn't there. We need to contribute to that. There's not enough money. Once we start paying people the civil service, those amounts, the whole economy will collapse again because we are not contributing enough. The issue of certain sectors being allowed to change in Zim, charge in US dollars, it really doesn't make a difference other than to expedite payments and to reduce costs. Because remember, if we say they should charge in Zim dollars, it means whatever it is was now coming through that particular sector. Let's take Chrome for instance, would still come in, get converted to Zim dollars, and those people would still go and buy that forex again. The only difference is the middlemen, the banks, would make a killing because they are basically doing transactions that can be avoided. The second thing is we would then fail to have equity in the sense that these sectors could struggle, because then that money, when it comes in as forex, may then be allocated to other areas that are not tied to the production of those exports. So it's a sort of shortcut that is used as an exception. Let's not make too big a thing about this, because ultimately what we want is to create an environment where the most efficient things are done, the things are done efficiently. If we try and bring all the foreign currency proceeds into one pot and take it out, corruption, misallocation through the banks would hinder those areas that are critical to those exports. There are always going to be exceptions to the rules. If there are specific instances where we think this is being abused, perhaps we need to tackle that. We had left out indigenization. I'm very unhappy that we have made a complete U-turn on the indigenization law, and we are now saying we are prepared to get foreigners to get everything here. Yes, there were political contestations around this. I'm not too sure this is the correct thing to do, because ultimately we don't want this country.
He says that it's about encouraging investment in the country, which had run away because of this law, which was really chasing away investors.
I disagree with that at a personal level. I think ultimately Zimbabwe should work for Zimbabweans. If foreigners come here, their capital should work to better our lots. We can't have us bringing investors and owning everything. I'm not too sure the new what the new provisions of the Replacement Act will be, but I get the feeling that we've just given everything away.
Negotiated. The government will take full responsibility of negotiating on behalf of the country in terms of how much they should be getting, in as much as it allows for 100% ownership.
Yeah, but there were real reasons why those laws were put in place. Yes, certain clauses may have been unrealistic, but we're doing away with this.
So you'd have preferred just a few amendments, not a complete overhaul of it?
No. We could have found a way of attracting that capital without necessarily giving everything away. Because the next thing is we are emboldening people. The next thing is somebody is going to say, let's give away the land as well and do away with land reform and everything like that. I don't like the direction that thing is going, to be honest with you.
All right, let's take some more contributions coming through from our listeners right here on Classic 263. This is the grill. Let's take another call before I take this contribution from a listener on our WhatsApp platform. Radio, good morning. Hello?
Good morning. I wanted to ask, is there no contradiction when the government says inflation is going to go down, and yet you find that in their budget they actually increase prices by 5 times? Like, let's say the toll gate fees, they've been increased by 5 times, and yet you find maybe for the civil servants the adjustments are not that much. Why do they contradict themselves in one breath and then say a different thing with the other? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Quite an interesting observation there, but we'll come to it. I know Pascal is itching to respond. Let me take a few contributions because we're running out of time. We'll include that in your closing remarks. Just take note of some of these contributions. The one says, I expected the minister to reduce corporate tax and give more incentives to companies to increase production. He didn't do anything on the economic growth. I thought maybe he did touch on stimulating economic growth with some of his policy announcements in terms of taxation and reprieves that he did give to different sectors. I'm sure Pascal will tackle that a bit. This one says taxing is the way forward. Every bit of transaction must pay tax. Every salary, every item that is Fere in Murewa. Thank you very much, Fere in Murewa. I don't know if people are going to agree with you, but I'm sure the minister will really love that kind of point. Good morning. The budget is the worst ever presented in Zimbabwe. The minister is capitalistic and nothing for the poor. All people except the few have been reduced to mere nothing, big wigs with no status. Imagine a father failing to feed the kids. The minister forgives industry debts on taxes at the expense of the majority. The government must be pro-people, not this Kamamba in Bulawayo. Thank you very much. Please kindly shed more light on the proposed mobile money tax. Thank you very much. Pascal is taking note of it. Morning, Anchor. Someone has just deleted their message. Thought maybe I wasn't going to read. Morning, Anchor. My contribution is utility fees such as ZSA, council bills, and Zinara should not have been increased until corruption has been stopped and looted funds recovered. Mdaram Fombi. Thank you very much, Mdaram Fombi. Right. Morning. Let's not forget that we have had budgets which were deemed excellent but produced nothing. Where is the surplus, Tishiwa Zaudai? And that surplus is coming from charging the already suffering people. It's a shame to see government beating its chest about surplus. All right. Let's respond to some of those contributions, and I'll take one or two callers before we conclude.
Yeah, the first one about inflationary contradictions. They exist, but it's the nature of the budget. What we need to understand is some of those changes were necessary because you really can't expect to be paying $2 at a toll gate. Remember, there's recovery tied to certain debts externally. So that will not drive inflation for everybody. It will drive the cost for the motorists, but it's not a huge driver. So I did mention that there are contradictions. We can't expect inflation to go down this very next month. But if it's one-off increase, then in October, it's not going to affect, in September, sorry, it's not going to affect September inflation. Issues to do with growth. For the first time, he sneaked in an agreement that we expect the economy to contract. They were always disagreeing with figures. I think now the reality is beginning to sink in. We're expecting the economy to contract by 2%. The issue regarding lowering taxation and whatever, I don't think the way to go is to lower taxes for people who are not complying. I think there needs to be a complete overhaul of the whole ZIMRA collections procedure. We're not doing enough. What would be the point of then reducing corporate tax to people who are already not complying anyway? Mobile money tax, I think it's to do with money changers mainly. People were now using those, specifically Econet, I'm not targeting them. The cash out and cash in facilities didn't attract a charge. So people were now using that to fuel foreign currency dealing. The answer now, the real question now is, if you tax it, are we going to stop the illegal forex dealing, or we are just putting another premium? I think perhaps the dealing will continue. It's just now not going to be abusing that particular platform. I'm surprised that the minister is now referring to a lot of what was happening on the illegal markets in some of his analysis, talking about convergence of risk. It's amusing that they were actually keeping an eye onto these things. So, yeah, there was a criticism about the budgets being useless and whatever. I think we also need to understand what the budget really is. It's to do with government expenditure and revenues. It's got nothing to do with your private transactions where you rip each other off, steal from each other. And I don't know where people get this understanding that we should avoid paying taxes and still get services. When you own a house, the agreement with whoever is in your local authorities, your council has set rates where the council then provides other facilities that are not tied to water. We need to understand this. Councils look after roads, they look after a lot of other things, clinics, they provide services for collection of your money, collection of refuse. That's tied to property ownership. Paying City of Harare is not just paying for water. So if you don't pay for those services, there will be degradation. And ultimately, the people who work for council will not stop paying themselves. They'll go to the banks and borrow. And once they borrow, we start destroying the financial institutions as well. People must just have a culture of paying what they owe. If you disagree with your bills, by all means, make your representations through council. There's a caller who said the other time that the system is down there. You know the size of your property, you know what rates you are supposed to pay. Please just comply. There's a dispute mechanism that's already in place. Instead of us then denying our councils and then expecting to get service, it just doesn't work that way, Valentine.
Pascal, I wish we had all day to really unpack and look at different issues, bread barter, industry, commerce, and so forth. But unfortunately, our time is limited and we've run out of it as well. But I must thank you very much. For that analysis that you've given us today. We'll continue exploring further and looking at how the minister is taking his way forward. I'm sure there shall be a breakfast meeting where we're going to be going there, where he's going to be asked questions, and we'll be keen to also follow on it and find out as well, have his understanding as well of his presentation. But thank you very much for making time and coming through.
It's a pleasure. Let's hope the new board is also listening to the good work that you are doing.
Excellent. Zimbabwe, that's all we had for you of the grill. Let's make a date again, the same time on Monday, right here. That's when we are back. My name is Valentine Mabugu. Good morning. Just stand by for the news at 8.